which parents are required to put all sorts of like parental control tools on their children's devices in and of themselves. Why is this particularly important? Firstly, it gives them incentive to do it. But secondly, it probably means that the reason as to why you'd be deterred from not doing it or from not taking your sweet time to do it is probably because you're going to be criminalized by virtue of the fact that it's a legal mandate as per the government. Yeah, that probably means you're losing out on your end of the social contract. We think this is then important, or that analysis is important, because it creates certainty of you actually being able to like fulfill your duty. That is to say, it stops becoming reliant on how much I like my child or how much I want them to be exposed to, but rather I am fulfilling an obligation as per the Uganda National Constitution. What exactly does that mean? It then means that even as a parent with your hierarchy of like priorities, it means you're less likely to opt into going to jail for something as simple as not being able to like put a screen time control on your kid's phone. What exactly do these parental controls tools look like? We think firstly, it looks like age restrictions on like specific apps, or even secondly, it limits the screen time limit. It limits like the amount of screen time that your child has. The reason as to why that is then important, or let me further like impact my characterization. Firstly, parents become more incentivized to have discourse. Why is this particularly true? Yeah, I think at a point in time at which you limit certain content, probably it's going to be negative content. But what exactly does that mean? Parents are extremely rational actors. That probably means you're now going to have more discourse with your children because they have limited one access of like experience of such things, or like exposure to those things. Yeah, we think it inherently becomes important for you as a parent to have discourse, because probably when your child reaches all this in the real world, or when they turn 18, they're now more able to navigate these things as an actual human being or as an adult that exists within the society. But like secondly, on obligation, and I think this is a principle justification for this policy. Like what I started with, one Mr. and Mrs. Shitito gave birth to me, inherently implying that they're responsible for everything that happens. Yeah, exactly. Now what exactly is also important to this, the entire idea that it's proximity dependent. That exactly means the reason that's why they're responsible for me is probably because they gave birth to me. That means because they're as close to me, they're responsible for each and every single action or each and every single thing that I'm exposed to. We think on principle, it's then justified under their obligation as parents for them to have that, for them to like install those apps. Yeah. But thirdly, why exactly is all this necessary? We think firstly, children are vulnerable. Secondly, they're internet exposure creates like a shift in their ideas, probably for the better or the worse. But thirdly, they are the contributors to what we call the future Uganda. That means if you expose them to harm, if you expose them to negativity, if you expose them to drugs, you are inherently harming the country that we're probably going to see in the next 10, 20 years. Yeah, I think partly on like even like if we were deciding to like prove likelihood, the reason why parents are more likely to put their children in something that is very important or in something that actually yields benefit is because now you've cut out one part of their education, so you inherently put them in a way, or in like you create more mechanisms for them to become decent human beings. You make to actually make themselves better. Yeah. So what exactly do I show you in this speech? Oh, maybe before I continue, probably the problem is like, yeah, I think I'll continue second speech, but I've never been more than proud to propose such a motion.
For clarity, I'll be taking my POIs in my second minute. Yeah? So I would like to first read out the motion. This House believes that parents should be legally mandated to install an Chair, notice that in the society we are living in, very many children are getting spoiled on phones. They are like getting addicted to phones. But let's take a look. What is the main cause of this? Notice that in society, we are having parents claiming to be very busy, and at the end of the day, they neglect their children. They leave their children to be brought up by mates and friends. Notice that the implication of that is that there is lack of like the parental-child's a connection between them. What then do parents do? Parents claim that, oh hey, kids are getting spoiled. Then government comes up to like put it as a legal mandate for them to install parental controls. Notice that because children have that gap already have an existing gap, if at all you enforce these parental controls, you will most likely widen that gap. Why is that so? Because these parents now you give them false security that their kid is now secure. They'll not go ahead to access the bad information online. They'll be safe from like those sort of manipulation that necessarily exists online. Notice why that then necessarily becomes bad is that this parent is completely neglecting even the simple sort of guidance, even the simple sort of like responsibility he or she has been like trying to implement to ensure discipline of their particular children. Notice that when it is made a legal mandate, it necessarily assumes that all parents should necessarily do this particular sort of thing, and they will face consequences at the end of the day. Notice why it should not be made a legal mandate is most likely it is not the best option to necessarily solve these particular things. Notice that these particular children necessarily need exposure to this particular sort of intent. But notice, exposure does not mean that we're just exposing them to this particular sort of information. We necessarily provide guidance to them to necessarily be able to like handle this content very well. Notice that if a child is brought up in a way that they are told continuously how to necessarily deal with content online, and in a scenario whereby children are just being like blindfolded by installing parental controls in that sort of phone. Notice that these two children, at a point in time whereby they can no longer be controlled by their parents, they will most likely be curious, they'll most likely want to explore that particular forbidden thing that their parents have been preventing them to. What is the impact of that? Is that we necessarily have very many kids above 18 necessarily being addicted to their phones and being addicted to things like TikTok, and they necessarily become less productive at the end of the day. What do they tell you on their side of the house? They come and they claim that, oh hey, this is going to make parents very much responsible because they are installing parental control tools in their kids' phones. Notice that because most of the parents are busy, they most likely put up measures even when they are minimal. Even when you return from work in the middle of the night, you necessarily come and look at your kid. Are they still on their phone or not? You necessarily eliminate that sort of thing within society, because the parent already installed this parental control and they necessarily feel like their kid is secure from everything. That means even those that have been trying to necessarily put up any measures to ensure that their kids are protected from these things online, that thing will necessarily phase out completely. Why then do we tell you that it is better, if at all we want these kids to have ethical online behavior, it is better that we like have these parents are incentivized to have dialogue within their kids. It is better that these parents have talks with their children, have more engagement with their children. Because the biggest problem is that these particular individuals are very busy and do not have the time for that. Notice that this then, at the end of the day, we necessarily have things like self-control and self-regulation of this particular kid. Notice that why this is most likely going to happen is because children necessarily believe in their parents, they most likely comply with what their parents tell them to do. If at all my parents tell me, go and sweep the house, I'll most likely go and do it, because it is. And that parent tells me that if you sweep the house, you're then promoting sanitation. I'll most likely comply to that, other than when a parent just come and authoritarianly tells me that, you know what, you shouldn't access TikTok, so I'll put a regulation on the screen time for your personal phone. I beg to rest.
Okay, before I start my speech, first I would like to give two shout outs. One to my teammate, Glenn and Helena, always supporting me, and to my coach, Vincent, for always coming for practice and training, being there for us. Thank you. I'll begin on my next thought. I think the responses that you're going to get for us are very simple. Two things. On the whole idea of like that divide between the parent and the child, on how like some sort of gap between the parent and the child is created, I think it's very simple. First of all, they undermine what Helena tells them in their speech. Already, based on principle, she tells you that the parent has that they inherently have the responsibility, they have the incentive to actually engage in discourse with this child. It's that like, it's that prescription is that it's something fundamental to the parent. It's something that comes naturally to the parent as a priority. It's less likely for the parent to actually end up separating from their child. But secondly, I think you can even buy into the whole idea of rationality on why still the parent does not want to see their child going in the wrong direction at the end of the day. Secondly, the whole chat on trust and compliance, on how parents have how children have an incentive, like how most children are actually trusting their parents, are actually more likely to comply. I think that doesn't apply in all scenarios because one, I think from what Helena still tells you, children are curious sets of people. That then means that they still have incentive to go and look for they still have incentive to go and look for things, for this type of content that they are trying to avoid. And even still, in the modern day, in the modern era where we have like all this technology and whatnot, the exposure to this content at the end of the day can even still end up being accidental. It cannot always be the child's incentive. I think from there, I'll show you how I get later on into my speech, how the impacts of that become better on our side of the house. Firstly, to extend on what Helena tells you about discourse, I think the whole thing, I think even a second mechanism is that just entirely on how you put these apps onto children's phones and whatnot. I think the whole analysis on that, since children are curious and all that, they are obviously incentivized to engage in discourse with their parents and teachers and relatives and whatnot. But secondly, I think that still pushes that likelihood of discourse to be high. But secondly, the magnitude is larger. Why? Because when this becomes, I think by virtue of the motion, it shows you that this has become legal. So it means everyone is aware of this. It means they engage in discourse not only with their parents, but with their teachers, with their peers, etc. They have more awareness at the end of the day. And I think the impacts from that are just obvious. And secondly, I think the whole response to why I think there's also still need for more analysis. I think still on the rationality of parents. Parents are aware that they know that eventually, when children grow up, they'll actually be independent of their parents. They'll actually then have incentive to explore this bad content. I think that's still a mechanism that still pushes parents to engage in meaningful discourse with their children, to educate them on all this content, to show them that even after they're independent of their parents, they still need to avoid this content and I think the impacts from there are still obvious. But secondly, and more importantly, I think on intuition, like the accessibility to this content becomes less. I think from what Helena tells you, there are things like content filters. I think on intuition, that shows that you reduce the amount of exposure children have to this bad content. But secondly, and more importantly, like there's a restriction these apps give to the amount of time children spend on devices. I think that still then incentivizes parents to actually still engage in discourse with their children. But even secondly, it incentivizes them to customize what these children use their screen time for. Why? Because when you take away this content that they are trying to get into, children are more likely to be idle. When parents are actually incentivized to buy into these things, they customize what their children can do, and I think the impacts from there on how they gain utility out of seeing their children successful and also still on the child is more important on our side of our house. Vote proposition.
Okay. I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Result. So, notice the side opposition argues to the fact that these parents have a responsibility to make sure that they guide their children and have the responsibility to make sure that everything is done by children is regulated by them. But again, what they're bringing in this case, what they're fronting for, is looking like making it a legal mandate for these parents to install the PJ in their children's phones. This looks like the government itself is taking away the responsibility of parents to regulate on how their children do this. They're taking away the responsibility of parents to know that, okay, I can control my child like this, I can control my child like this, and they're dictating for them. In that case, they're taking away the autonomy of parents to have decisions their children like, and then they are creating like a sort of parents that what should parents follow. And second, one, look at the likelihood of happening. First of all, if this is made a legal mandate, it seems that if parents don't do this, they will be arrested. Yes. Okay. How will the government know that a parent has not
PG in our children, in the child's phone. That means that it's a child report. And look at the child, at the likelihood, a child coming up to report that, oh my God, my parent didn't install PG in my phone and they didn't follow what the government says. That then necessarily means that the likelihood of this being practical is less on their side. But even in the case whereby, okay, okay, this happens, the parents do. Look at the case of these parents now having that false security, whereby they feel like, okay, fulfill the government's mandate. The government says install this, install the. It then necessarily relieves me of the burden of now counseling my child, looking into the child doing this. I'm then relieved. Even when my child misbehaves or does what's wrong, I then have an excuse to say that, oh my God, I did what the government says. So, oh, what are you accusing me of? I did what I'm supposed to do. Secondly, if you look at when they tell you that, you know what, these children, when they grow up, they will be looking like they will have their parents graduate them. But we tell you on our side, one, it's necessary for these children to be like engaged into such platforms, but rather regulate them, sensitize them, guide them, and counsel them on how to use these platforms. So that even when they are still at a young age, they're exposed to such things. And when they grow up, they don't seem naive or seem like they don't know such things. Okay, what's the difference between a 19-year-old girl and an 18-year-old girl? The difference is totally less. But if you look at a person who has been limited to such things and has been literally controlled, when they reach 19, they look like they want to get exposed to new things because literally they have been regulated and all that. So it then brings in the naivety and they end up doing what's wrong. But what happens on our side of the debate is like we are regulating, we are teaching them we are guiding them and counseling them and teaching them how to manage life. So meanwhile, these things do not appear to be new to their side. Secondly, even when you look into the side where they tell you that, you know what, we are preventing them from using their useful time on platforms, we tell them two arguments to this. One, these children are spending time on these gadgets probably if you regulate them, it then means that they will use these gadgets for the right cause. They will like playing games, making research, and so on, attempt to that. But when you limit the time they're using, it means that they will have less time on these devices and use the other time to engage in unproductive things. Unproductive things like maybe looking for peer influence, peer groups to engage in, going for maybe drugs because maybe they are now free and they do not think like they are engaged in this case. Then Pano, what do you have on that side of that debate? The side of the debate tells you that one, we are fighting for an alternative of making sure that these children are guided and counseled from their very early stages, so that they even when I have my phone there, oh, I know I have my phone, I have the audacity to open any app, but I do not want to open it because my mom tells me this is it, and that's that. Then secondly, we are looking at this side of the opposition as one side that's going to infringe on the parents' autonomy, because parents have the autonomy to decide on what their parents are doing and do their responsibility part. So on the factor of responsibility, then parents now fulfill their responsibility better when they have that chance, and when they have the chance and given the mandate to and given the autonomy to make sure that they decide what happens in their child's life, rather than them that give these parents exactly what they have to do. Secondly, we question their practicability, and their practicability fails out in this debate. We look at this as something that's not going to happen. And lastly, we foster something that's going to be efficiency and sustainable, whereby even when these children grow up and now they are no longer at the age of 18, the nature of children looks like if you teach them something from childhood, they'll grow up knowing this. So if I've been told to regulate myself from using this phone in the other way, I will follow that as I grow. I rest my case.
I'll start with my next word. Okay. When watching a movie on illegal websites like MovieBox, the scar on immorality on a child that occurs when you watch Prime Megan Fox in Transformers, or when you click the ad that says Sarah in your neighborhood wants to meet you, is one that's irreversible, is one that's long-term. Proud to propose. First chat here, they say parents are going to have a false sense of security. It makes them complacent. Here's the problem with the argument. Helena outframes it within fast. How? When you place parental control tools on devices, there's an inherent incentive for you to have discourse with your child. Why is this true? Firstly, you're rational as a parent. You know that there's going to be a radical shift outside your teenagers, right? You're likely to become an adult and you're going to be subjected to these things because they're inevitable. The fear of the radical shift that occurs coerces you to have discourse with your child because of the tipping point created by the legal mandation. But two, there's a biological need for you to maximize your utility, to
deterring children from the potential impacts that they could accrue. For example, this is why probably parents stop children from getting out at night because they are biologically obliged to do so. But 3, the principal obligation, stuff like random birth lottery, they didn't ask to be born. This principal obligation coerces you to care about them in of itself. Why is this important? These are all mechanisms that create incentive for you to have discourse with your child. It flips the entirety of their case there. But secondly, on weighing, why is this discourse comparatively better? Firstly, you have restricted freedom of your own child. That is to say, the only way you justify that restriction is by giving them a proportional benefit. What's the much more likely proportional benefit? More safety, having much more utility when they're adults, right? But secondly, there's much more incentive for you to have nuanced discourse. Why? There's stuff like curiosity. A child is going to be curious. Why have you done something so radical? What content don't you want me to see? So there's much more incentive for you to have nuanced discourse. You have discourse with your friends, not only with your family. So the level of solvency that comes from this discourse is comparatively better. I'll take it. I don't, my days. But okay, I don't think this debate can happen when people do not have phones. And I've already explained why you do create discourse even when, because of biological obligations and stuff like that. Okay, efficiency arguments, I'll take it out. Firstly, they say that parents have to constantly check on their children's devices and children can easily bypass these things. I'll flip the argument. If you live in a world whereby everybody is in stone age and they don't know anything about technology, we flip the argument by saying this creates much more incentive for parents to become much more technologically knowledgeable. Why? Because you want to accrue the benefits of solvency. Third chart here. I think the third thing they say is silly, that it coerces parents into doing stuff that they don't want. That argument is dependent on saying that the solvency that you get from your own child, not seeing porn when they go on the website, not being cyberbullied, it's something just because it's coercive, it's something that's bad. I can't stand for that. But coercion is done all the time. For example, you're coerced to pay taxes. The reason as to why it's done is because there's a proportional benefit that comes from it. Here's the thing. Cyrus and Helena explained why you get a proportional benefit. Because children can't access things that inherently harm them. I think second thing I have to talk about is their counterfactual. Their counterfactual is exposure. One question. What happens when you expose this child to content that's so bad that they can't recover from it? The intensity of harm is worse. Because there are things like cyberbullying that you can't recover from. Because the entirety of that case is dependent on stuff like you expose this child to something and they're deterred from doing it ever again. That's bad because the effect that the harm is so intense, this person can't recover from it. So inherently harm the vulnerability of children. Why do we beat them in this debate? I think we beat them in this debate because they're outframed from past. But 2, that our impacts are much more proximate to children. We show you why on magnitude, much more children are able to accrue the benefits we set in our world. We are proud to propose.
Okay, before I start my speech, a few shoutouts. I want to shout out to Shan. And I wish I got success in our exams. Janat, though she's not here. Chisero for training us. Sema for always promising us stuff. Yeah. Yeah, and my teammates for being cooperative. And last of all, my parents for being supportive. Okay. Please don't even raise your hand. I will not take you. Okay, I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, we're using 4 minutes. 4, yeah? Okay, I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think, Chair, even when you didn't buy Glennie's analysis, they will still lose even more, is that they want to assert that parents don't know their responsibility. I think the entire reason as to why we're debating, we assert that parents know their responsibility, that they have to take care of their kids. What the question becomes, how are they taking care of their kids? Is it by putting up this kind of parental control to start with? Why their side of the house becomes very much worse. They want that, oh my God, because of things like exposure or the counterfactual we provide to you, being exposure, most likely kids are not able to recover from this exposure. I think quite often it becomes bad, basing on assertion, the wrong assertion they make that parents don't exist. I think I already show you the care of their kids, not what then happens that parents take care of their kids, but not rather just giving them limitation on online kind of like stuff. I think what it becomes bad them assert like that is that then they eliminate the entire reason as to why parents exist. I think on their side of the house, this suddenly becomes bad. whatever the name. I think he runs an analysis saying that, oh my gosh, to various kind of ideologies, get exposed to how to touch things like fire, to play things like soil, and didn't know what that soil exists. Most probably, that's the reason that's why you'll find someone in the future necessarily finding compatibility in playing soil. I think that one necessarily becomes bad. But then secondly, I think the ideology of them thinking that, oh my God, because the ideology on why they lose is that, oh my God, because people are going to like be created like alternatives to this kind of particular, to do various kind of particular things like drug abuse, things like smoking, which suddenly becomes bad at the expense of that kind of house. They don't have anything like solvency. I think why we win the debate is that the only people that solve the problem. Why? We look into the aftermath. I think the entire reason as why we have this debate most probably is to show them how then we're able to like solve the problems of the future. How are we able to necessarily resort to kids being able to necessarily use the internet in the future, not in the present day. I think their side of the house is short term and will not win that debate. I think why we win is that our impacts are long term. Even when the kid is getting exposed and they want to think it's bad, most probably they'll be able to benefit for it in the aftermath. In the aftermath, they'll be able to know what then they went through and be able to interpret it in the like current day. I think the reason as to why we have kids what you call like someone being proud of being called my mother's baby is because certain kids have been grown up in kind of closed spaces. Kids have not been exposed to various kind of ideology. It necessarily becomes bad. Why? A kid is not able to think in the future. A kid is able to is going to act like as if that 2 years that to the 19 suddenly becomes bad. The reason that's why we have this debate. They don't engage on that. They don't fulfill it in anything, whatever they want to call it. I think on a comparative, compare our world where we expose kids to various kind of media sources and they are able to necessarily manipulate them and get to know how to use them. And a world where we encourage these kind of particular kids to things like sites, things like websites on what they ought to get, on what they have to engage and not engage. I think quite suddenly becomes bad is at the end of the day, you don't achieve anything. Like the reason as why we have like this debate or this entire kind of debate. What suddenly becomes bad is that kids are necessarily not going to be able to put up future, they're not going to be able to produce future results. I think the reason as why we're debating is to see that kids are able to manipulate the future and get things like cyberbullying. Even when they are in the experts that you have cyberbullying at the house, their side of the house has cyberbullying at the age of 20. Ours is at the age of 2. I beg to raise my case.
I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. So, partner, what necessarily takes place in this debate is the fact that the resolution necessarily fronts for promotion of molarity in this case, whereby we are looking at the better good of the stakeholders who are the children in this case. What happens in this case? This case necessarily narrows down to things like the responsibility of the parents, and then necessarily what happens after the children, like what impact is on the children and the long-term impact. Why our side wins? Our side wins because, one, we show you why parents have the responsibility to make sure that they regulate their children or guide their children, even when they are not pushed or influenced by the government. We then tell you that this thing of legal mandate looks like you are just pushing these parents, and even when they agree to the pushing, they will then have a false security and won't do other things, and they'll just rely on that, which then leaves out the whole point of molarity. Then thirdly, we look into the fact that when you go on to our alternative that we tell you, it looks like, one, it's going to have the morality achieved, and secondly, even the relationship between the parents and their children is going to be promoted. So the side that wins this debate is the side that tells you how the responsibility is achieved and how the morality is achieved. Why we think that team proposition couldn't necessarily stand in this case is because they fail to engage on factors that are proposed by team fail to engage on the factors that are proposed by team opposition, and necessarily what they found in this case, they fail to back it out and then don't stand in that case. Then thirdly, when you look into what side opposition fronts for, side opposition fronts like a world whereby parents have the autonomy to decide for their children, and when they decide for their children, they know what's better for their children. When they know what's better for their children, it looks like they're going to have the regular decisions for them. Then even we tell you that, okay, even when these children are exposed to this unnecessary information as they assume, it looks like this information then becomes necessary for as long as they are guided on how to perceive it. This then looks like after then when they make 18 and beyond, it then looks like they are already exposed to this information, and then maturity will be defined by the experience they get from this, because the experience they're having is already guided by how their parents tell them to perceive these things. So even when they mature, they're not going to be like people who are naive in society, and people who are going to be exposed into new things and end up being immature, even at the later, end up being immoral, even at the later ages of maturity. I beg to rest.
If we decided to engage what status quo is on the basis of the fact that they claim that we undermine what a parent's responsibility is, it then looks like this. Parents know that they are supposed to take care of their children. That is why they expose them to certain things, like opposition says. The reason as to why they don't win, despite the fact that they fulfill that responsibility, if I can say, is because as fiat of the motion, that is the problem within status quo. There exists a need for something to be changed on the parents' responsibility or on how they further curb this problem. I am more than proud to oppose. I think firstly, they don't provide adequate explanation or like engagement on why exactly we don't fail out on like our principle, on why necessarily there is an inherent like incentive for these parents to care about their kids. What do we tell them? The biggest thing that comes from our side of the house is that we're going to encourage discourse, yeah? And I'm going to now clearly compare it with their side of the house. On their side of the house, your parents expose you to all sorts of things, so they feel like, oh man, that kid is sawa. There is no need for me to talk to them. As opposed to our side of the house, now because you've cut out that engagement or you've cut out that exposure, you're more incentivized to talk to them about firstly why it's bad and why they shouldn't engage in these things. The solving thing that then comes from outside of the house is now the kids are more guided, as opposed to me throwing me into the world and giving me a phone and hoping that I probably learn why pornography is bad or not. Secondly, they fail to understand the biological need, and secondly, the rationality for people to actually be able, for parents to care about their children. What Glenn tells you is that you gave birth to me. That means by virtue of you giving birth to me, it means you're responsible for me and you would love to see me succeed. That is why mothers are mothers, because they're biologically designed to make sure they care about their children. I don't think they engage that. But even on principle, they fail to engage that obligation is entirely dependent on proximity. You are the closest human being to me by virtue of the fact that you are the reason for my existence. That inherently implies that you are extremely responsible for me. Incentivizing the reason as to why you are going to directly engage me with these things. I think by virtue of all that I've given you in my responses, I'm more than proud to propose, and I'm more than glad to participate in this final. I beg to submit.
guys. My name is Gina Juchi. She's Namuli Elizabeth, and we're from Green Hill Academy. And yeah, we're poets. I hope you enjoy this. So when she told me she was going to be my friend, I believed. When she said she would be my best friend, I believed. When she said she would be my own, I believed. But who am I to trust the girl behind the phone screen? No one told me she was actually a him when I spilled the tales of my home. No one told me she was actually a him when I spilled the secrets to my heart. No one told me she was actually a him, and he would be the biggest tragedy I never saw coming.
My voice was stolen by one single thing. My story was no longer mine to tell. My friend, my escape turned out to be my biggest hell. The nightmare I never saw coming.
So where are those who swore to protect us? Where are those who say this was a safe space? Where are they? Maybe, just maybe, someone told me what to expect.
I wouldn't have put myself on the net.
Thank you.
So much, Gina and Elizabeth. Number one.
When it is, here's the thing. I spiral and drown in my thoughts like I'm a 3-year-old who can't swim. I feel like the fire is burning me now out, and now I sit in silence, jealous of other people's happiness. I don't have friends. So what's the point of being with someone close to me when they kind of work hard to get far from me? Plus, I have trust issues. What's the point of trusting someone when your own shadow is in the dark? I don't have a God. The last time a girl entrusted me with a key to her heart, the last time a girl gave me her heart, I broke it. I feel like I'm on the edge. No, I want to jump off a cliff. I prayed to God every single night, but he hit my prayers was red. I would tell my mom, but not here. This is how to try to do sometimes. It's a bit like running away from heaven. You also want to come to God grave after you sealed to put your heart out of its misery. You all of a sudden feel down and want to cry out. You also put your sadness into point. You can let that person into deep lines for your poem. People always love to read your deep lines but never ask if you're drowning. You also put a picture now sometimes when they ask if you're okay. And I know that you are. I guess I'm okay. Right?
Thank you, Janice. Could you clap for Janice for that wonderful session? So, a child can spend 8 hours gaming, but when they go for prep, sometimes after just 5 minutes, their eyes start slowly going down, and before you know it, their head can get to the desk, and before you know it, not a lot of learning happens. So, why sporting? Why debating as a sport? Debate competitions are a form of gamification for very critical learning outcomes. And these learning outcomes can range from oral expression to critical thinking to accumulation of very critical knowledge that is important for the progression of societies. At Debate Institute Africa, we believe in this power. We believe we can harness it for the good of the community. And that's why we leverage the model. Not so that we spend air or get that trophy, but that we harness the power of competition to accelerate those specific learning outcomes. As such, competitions inherently involve the aspect of reward. Because at the end of a competition, you can't tell people, okay, thank you for getting the skills, now go back to school. There's an element of reward. That's why a child is going to spend 8 hours gaming, right? Because there is a reward. You go to the next stage, you go to the next stage. And that is critically important. And because there's an element of reward, as Debate Institute Africa, we are very, very particular to doing awards exceptionally well. Again, that's the least you can expect from a debate tournament, to get very good awards. But before we do that, we shall just get a few closing remarks and just slide into the awarding ceremony. Now, this work of art did not create itself. It involved a lot of coordination from different stakeholders. From the side of Debate Institute Africa, this project would not have been possible without the the craft of a gentleman who, through his passion, patience, and potential into this project, believing in it from the very, very beginning. That's from last year, by the way, until today when it has come to shape up. They would like to give a few closing remarks as we close all the regionals before we head to the national. And that is none other than Xavier. Xavier has been team lead of Debate Institute Africa. And as you can see, the excellence with which these events have unfolded, and him wearing his suit like Thomas Shelby. First stand there, you man. First stand there and they. Okay, so Xavier is going to speak to us, after which they will invite the next speech from the head of department of UCC Consumer Protection Affairs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The people that are making noise, they want to detooth me, don't be fooled. Our chief guest, Mr. Ibrahim Bossa, the head Public and International Affairs, the head of Department, Consumer Protection Office, Mr. Joseph Chizito, the Director, Economic Regulation, Content and Consumer Affairs, Ms. Julian Treheire, and the Manager, Consumer Affairs, Mr. Treheire Kenneth. Our dear patrons, our dear students, a very good evening to you all. Good evening to you all. The awards have come on stage. Now you don't want to speak. We will take back our awards. Okay, so my name is Zarinda Xavier. I am a team lead at Debate Institute Africa, and I have been coordinating this project from its inception up to now. What has happened over the last few days has been more than just an empowerment program. We've had 8 days of back-to-back regional debate series, engaging 80 schools in the competitions, and also having 10 school sensitization programs across 4 different districts in 4 different regions. We've had 12,000 direct conversations on digital safety, excluding social and mainstream media. Now, those of you that are good with the numbers and math, you must know something called Dunbar's estimate. Using that specific estimate, it is projected that these conversations will approximately expand to over 1 million Ugandan youth. This is the impact we've had in a space of 8 days. I want that to sink in to each and every one of you at this Kampala regional, that we've had 8 days and we've had so much enormous impact in just a small space. Now, I would like to thank a few of the vision bearers of this project, chief among whom is Mr. Joseph Chizito. Mr. Joseph Chizito, who usually prefers to be called Joe, who is the head of consumer protection at UCC, has been more than just a vision bearer. He has been our father. He has mentored us throughout the entire process. Please, let's give him another round of applause. So this project was incepted around 10 months ago. So it wasn't just today or a week before or just a month. It has been 10 months in the making. And the gentleman right in front of you has been through that process and has been guiding us, and we want to thank him at DIA. We are exceedingly grateful that you walked this journey with us. I'd like to also thank the team at UCC, Alice, Grace, and our head of the team, Mr. Ken, like also he prefers to call himself, or he prefers to be called. You have been an incredible team and you've made all this possible. I'd like to thank the team at Debate Institute Africa. Students, let's clap for Debate Institute Africa. Yes. Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. At least now you warm my heart with that clap. Now, at DIA, we've had a very, 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 very incredible team that has done an amazing job all across the 4 regions. Chief among these people is a silent individual that has not been with us. His name is James Okuku, who, thank you very much. So, as you can see, he's very much well known for his efforts and his work. James Okuku, who currently is in South Africa, did a tremendous job to make sure that the themes that we are debating today were possible and the motions that we so vehemently argued for or against were made possible and available to all of you. Let's clap for him again. I would like to also thank Joseph. Please, let's clap for Joseph. So the students, I'm sure you received the matter file, the research matter file, and it was very, very, very comprehensive. So all that knowledge was as a result of his research and his effort and his time, and I hope it did more than inform you. I hope it was able to guide you and make this process easier for you. Let's clap for him once again. I'd like to thank Gracious, I'd like to thank Harold, who have made sure that these entire processes are very much streamlined and are easier from registration to logistics. And most significantly, I'd like us to thank our core adjudication panel. Let's clap for the CAP. So we've had a very amazing core adjudication panel, which is probably the reason why, unlike we are live, so I'm not going to say this remark, we did not have a lot of issues in the debate rooms. The debates were near seamless. We've not had a lot of complaints. We've had students give a lot of positive feedback. And even once or twice, even when there was that remark that might not have been positive, it has been resolved much easily. I'd like to thank the core adjudication panel and the judges that have made this possible. Now, to the patrons, I do not know how to thank you enough. Perhaps your students should stand up and clap for you. Students, please, if you're a student and you're in here, please stand up and clap for your patrons. Yes, that had to be extended. Because the truth is, in as much as you love speech and debate and all these things, you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for their sweat. If they weren't genuinely interested, you would be at school, it's a Monday, you'd be from having, I don't know, 5, 6 lessons, and you'd right now be very exhausted. But instead, you're here, you're contributing directly to the national policy on digital safety. Thank you very much, our patrons. You do an amazing work. Now, to the students themselves, whose thoughts and visions we've collected over this period of time across the country, I pray that you take pride in knowing that you are the reason we are here, that we are the reason why we had 10 months of preparing relentlessly. We had endless hours, sleepless nights of traveling across the country, that this message we wanted to get from you. We wanted you to talk to us. We wanted you to be able to communicate to us. Because certainly, and most certainly, your voice matters, and I hope you take pride, whether you're here or you're there, whether you reach the finals or not. I hope you take pride in the fact that your voice actually matters to us, and it actually matters to the nation. Please clap for yourselves for doing an amazing job at making your voice actually matter. The UCC debate series is not just a debate competition. Make no mistake, this is more than just an empowerment program. This is actually a deliberate step to make sure that every citizen, every youth in this country is empowered enough to be able to navigate a digital society, a highly digital society that is possibly going to be a little bit more problematic if we are not empowered enough. I'd like to thank UCC for this initiative because it is very timely and it has come at the right time. And I pray, just like our host at Fort Portal says or said, that this is a series. I pray that it is continuous. I pray that we keep empowering these individuals. And I pray, no, not pray, I can assure you that Debate Institute Africa will be here throughout the entire journey together. Thank you very much for having us, and thank you very much for debating. Thank you. So at this juncture, I'll welcome the head of Department Consumer Protection, Mr. Joseph Chigozi Chizito, to talk to us. Let's clap louder. This is the vision bearer of this project.
And Sylvia, thanks for the kind words. And there is a demonstration of the two generations. While the previous speaker walks away holding a laptop, the other speaker walks in with a notebook. Yes, that's the difference. And we acknowledge that and accept it. And that's why we're working with you. We recognize your position. We recognize that your voice matters in as far as our business is concerned and where we're trying to take our country. The Director Economic Regulations, Content and Consumer Affairs, that's our director. I head the department, but in the structure of the UCC, she heads the overarching directorate that accommodates not only consumer affairs, but content, the things you have online, the things you see on TV and you hear on radio, and then the economic regulations, the economics in the communications sector. So, Mr. Julian Mahire, I take this great honor to welcome you, and I'm more than pleased that you are here to witness for yourself. What you need to know is that Julian sits at the topmost decision-making organ of the commission. So what she hears here, what she witnesses here, trust me, it will get first-hand witness when she gets back into her spaces back at the office. My colleagues at the commission, the coaches and the teachers, the participants, once again, I welcome you to this closing bit of the Central Region phase of our national activity. And Xavier really put it well. I cannot go through that again. We started off eight days ago, and the director was telling me, I think you guys, when you're walking into this, you didn't know the magnitude of what you're taken on. But here we are 8 days later, trust me. And I said this in Fort Portal, right after we'd done our first activity, that for me, we had already registered success. After we dealt with the kids from Western Uganda, it was clear we're on the right path. It was clear we're going to make it beyond our dreams even. So we had already scored our success. It was a matter of how much more can we push this one. So I want to thank you for that journey from Fort Portal to Lira. And each region, by the way, gives you a very different dimension to this activity. There's something we've seen about the Central region. Probably you're more exposed. Probably you have more access to the digital spaces. There's a certain depth you have in your presentations. The judges will give us their comments. Yeah, clap for yourselves, by the way. And I told you in my opening remarks in the morning that the kids from the other regions, from the West, East, and East and North, for them the benchmark, the motivation was to beat the kids from the Central. But we are still yet to see that because the grand finale is coming. And we really look forward to that showdown. But we thank the Almighty that we've been able to travel these distances, go through all the regions. We didn't fall sick. We didn't get accidents. We concluded well. We didn't have fights. All the competitions were civil, and we thank the Almighty for that. And here we are in Kampala, closing off this one. You will notice that our remarks are both the closing remarks for the Central Region competition, but also a wrap-up of the entire activity. Xavier said a lot of where this journey started. Very kind words. Probably too much, I don't know, but thank you very much. We take them together. I head the team. It's not entirely myself alone, together with my team, the project manager, Grace Suvuga, our supervisor, Alice, the manager in the team, Ken, our partners at the commission, more specifically, Mr. Ibrahim Bossa here. Mr. Ibrahim Bossa, we had functions of the commission that kind of have a very strong relationship. I head the consumer affairs, he heads the public relations and international relations. So we've had long back-end conversations on where we want to go, on what we can change, how can we position it to get value to the commission, the stakeholders, the schools to see the value, top management to see what we're trying to do, and we move forward. So and he's a very knowledgeable person. He's very exposed, very known on the communication spaces. So we've had very good conversation. And Mr. Bossa, you're a true brother to me. You know that. I appreciate that conversation and many other things that we do back at the commission. So so when Xavier came, when this idea came, we reached out. Meanwhile, I also have a debater in my house. And I think by some luck, she might even be in this room. So when this idea came also, I had to bounce off certain points. And when they said, now you have to meet a gentleman called Xavier. Now me from my spiritual side, there's one Xavier I know. And I made an appointment. I told guys, come to my office. Xavier and Mr. James Okuku walked into my office. Now, as the senior guys, when you are going to meet stakeholders on big projects, there's a certain age bracket you expect. In walked two boys. I remember even telling Grace, are you sure these are, but anyway, they sat across my desk and we discussed. But never judge a book by its cover. Once they started speaking, oh my God, you saw Xavier here. You know James Okuku, like were the right hands. So it was, I mean, they convinced me. Of course, I brought on board my team that I had. I initiated the thing, but I had to sell it to my team to understand what we're trying to do. As head of the team, also, you know what the commission has tasked you to do. We're tasked to promote consumer awareness, consumer protection, get feedback, get people in the digital empowerment spaces, get the people in. So I knew there's a catchment area of over 30 million people who are below a certain age, and the big catchment area is the schools. So we knew we had to find a way into the schools. So once our view, and of course based on the mandate of the commission and the function of our department, once I engaged Xavier and Mr. Kuku, I knew we were going to make a very beautiful marriage. And here we are. I will spare the details of that, of what followed thereafter, but here we are. They structured everything. We came up with our logistical side. We developed the strategic objects we want to need and what we call success. And I think when you hear the debates where you've been in the region and here, the successes are self-explanatory. And the outputs, of course, we'll expect. Of course, they have already compiled the reports for the 4 regions. There will be a report for this central region, and we shall have a national report. In there, with their ability, with their knowledge, we expect to have very rich documents that are going to form so many conversations across the spectrum. That said, I had prepared a note on the depth of what we have done so far in the 8 days. Xavier has done justice to that. I'll spare you the details. I will not go into that. But Director, I will tell you that when you listen to these young people in all the 4 regions, trust me, as they look, first of all, they speak with so much energy, so much passion, so much knowledge and depth and contextualization. You want to think, if you are old enough, I think our jobs will be in trouble. But I think you're still too young. I think we still have some more years to work. But they're already there, they've arrived. And then above all, they look up to you. They look up to you on the issues they have, on the propositions they have, on the recommendations they make, on the contradictions they point out for you. Mr. UICT Bwanda, you're doing this, you're telling us we are going to promote competence-based education using ICTs, but you're telling us you cannot have phones at school. They throw a glaring contradiction in your face, and you're like, okay, yeah, food for thought. shall go back and think. But that kind of thing, my point is that as a UCC, as the custodian of growing and giving direction of communication services in the country, we cannot afford to disappoint these people. We cannot. And we'll make that pledge to you. Yeah, clap for it. We cannot afford to disappoint you because that's the clear message. One, your issues are genuine, authentic, and are factual. Two, you have the numbers. You're 2/3 of the population of this country. We can't ignore you. So we'll not disappoint you. The commitment Sevi has made, my boss will make a little more remarks. We'll see what we can pick out moving forward. The cry has been heard. You've been loud and clear. There are so many issues you raised on devices, mode of regulation, bigger spaces, regulating or engaging beyond our small boundaries as a country. I think we're in northern Uganda where somebody said Uganda as a country, the digital space brings the whole global world together. Uganda as a country, we are just a small fraction of that country. We cannot make initiatives that are limited within our small boundaries. And because I'll skip that, then I'll try to make a point around the grand finale. The grand finale, our DIA people will come here. Thank you. So the time, it will not be a crash course life. This is again to and the rest. This is again to and the rest. The ladies, the judges, your commitment. These are young people. I think Julian didn't see who exactly you are. Many of them are out there. But those who are here, please stand so that you see how young this group is that we're talking about. The DIA team that is here. Debate Institute Africa. Cynthia, stand up. Where's Lamaro? Okay. And many others, you've seen them in the blue t-shirt. So they can, and they have very high degrees of integrity. When they are judging, the teams are not called their names, Namiliango, Green Hill, no, they code them. So you don't know who you're dealing with. Now, integrity is one of our, the passion to on very little, and we're looking that there's one football team that never wins trophy, but it still participates in the next season. Which team is that? Which team is that? Manchester United. Thank you very much. It's my great honor. So if you haven't won, please just know there will be UCC Debate Series 2026, another opportunity to bounce back, unlike the other football club. My great honor and pleasure to invite the director to come and address you. Yeah, and thank you very much for listening.
Very nice to be here this afternoon. When Joe called me, I was out of town, and he almost directed me to make sure that I'm here to listen into the last part of this central edition. I think mostly because of the experience in the morning and what had transpired. And when Joe directs me to come and participate in an episode of this nature, I oblige. And so I came in, I literally got into town about 2 o'clock and came straight here. And I can tell you that I'm not disappointed. I think this has been fantastic. I would have wanted to leave the protocol, since a lot of you have already been able to establish it, but then just for emphasis, our young debaters and public speakers, the coaches and the teachers, our partners, Debate Institute Africa, and our other partners, Legends Events and Solfit, our hosts, UICT, my colleagues at UCC, and all of you here present. Good afternoon. First of all, after the round of public speaking that I was able to witness, I can say the first thing is that I look forward to the director digital innovation, to come and present at our top management meeting the strategy. I'm really keen to listen to the strategy. And one thing for sure is that at UCC, we will be honored. So please, if you're here, I can't wait to listen to this strategy. I'm sure it will be a good one. All of you today, your submissions, the quality, your poise, the content, the confidence, I can say that our country, Uganda, is in really, really good hands. You are truly the future. A few months ago, my 16-year-old niece texted me in the middle of the night, panicking because her Instagram account had been hacked. All of her messages, her photos, and even her conversations had vanished into thin air. She felt exposed, she was scared, she was helpless. And yet, when I asked her how often she thinks about online safety, she laughed and she said, "Who even thinks about this kind of stuff?" And here's the thing, you should. We all should. And we should be alert, because this is the reality. This is simply because the digital world that we love so much, whether it's for memes, DMs, or videos, they can be dangerous if we don't protect ourselves. And so, all of you young people here, this is why the UCC decided to engage in this debate series. The UCC debate series is the first of its kind, and in as far as our engagement activities are concerned, this is one of the many that we would like to flagship. You know what flagship is? Something that we'd like to own and carry on for many generations to come. And why is this? Because the 2 hours I've been here, I am so impressed. And I think this is something that will not end. And I can commit from myself, I can commit from my top management team that this is going to go on for many years to come. I was not able to physically witness what happened in Fort Portal, in Lira, or in Jinja, but I was able to watch it digitally, you see. But what I've seen today has convinced me that this is not going to end just with your group, but it's something that will be carried on, especially in all our schools, because it's necessary, but it's also important that we pass this on from one generation to the next. So in Uganda, I think just like the rest of the world, we have created a TikTok generation. And I think this is something that we should be not scared about. And I think a lot of you have already discussed it, especially in the debate. I think it's something that we need to nurture, because we're not going to avoid innovation. We're not going to avoid going into the direction of videos. If you don't know the statistics, TikTok generates more than 50%. Actually, I'll give you the real statistic. 58% of all of the content consumed in Uganda, of all the data consumed in Uganda, is only on one platform, TikTok. Sadly, we don't own it. We're working for other people. So this generation, whilst we know that this is the direction we're going with short videos and online content, I want you to think about creating your own TikTok. Because you're not going to stop, right? It's a good platform to engage. In fact, other countries use TikTok to disseminate information to do with the economics of the country, development agenda, communication in itself, but they own those platforms. What about you? You want to be known as a generation that will forever use other people's platforms to engage amongst yourselves? I don't think so. So this is really a challenge. that whilst we know that this is the direction we're going, because that's the best way to communicate for the young people, unlike Joe, who is still writing on pieces of paper, I think the rest of us, look at me putting myself with you, I think we should definitely think about how we can own our own platforms, because this is how we like communicating. And it's not a bad thing. It's a style of communication. It's all part of innovation. But let's try and create our own, but obviously it comes with a lot of caution. So with great power, especially in this internet world, comes great responsibility. And in today's digital world, the stakes are very, very high. One click can lead you to a scam. A single share might spread false news, and one download can risk exposing your personal data. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something about your future, which you might not know about today. When you're going to look for a job at UCC, when you're going to apply for an American visa, the one thing that we check for is your social media content, to see how you engage online. We want to see what you say online. We want to see what you share online. Because what you share in what you think is your private space could actually lead you into a lot of trouble in the future. Whether it's in securing a job, whether it's in getting a visa, or whether even it's getting into the school of your choice. So again, with a lot of caution, please watch everything that you put out, especially on where you think is your own private space, okay? And so this debate series and also other UCC consumer empowerment initiatives aim to equip all of us here with critical thinking skills necessary not only to win arguments, as today, but also to be independent-minded, to be responsible, but also to shape your digital future wisely. And so allow me to register my appreciation to all of you, the young debaters, the public speakers, for your response to our call to unreservedly express yourselves. You have been phenomenal. Please clap for yourselves. All the participants here today, and also the participants in the other 3 regions, representing over 800 debaters from 80 schools. You have debated with fire, conviction, clarity, context, and ambition. And indeed, you're a generation to reckon with. And it's one thing to be a master debater, but another to be able to comprehend the debate and then blend the two to generate convincing recommendations. And at UCC, we really, really salute you. Your ideas, from stronger digital laws to youth-led awareness campaigns, these will be compiled to inform policy. So you're not just here speaking on microphones, but you're shaping national, regional, and international conversations. So as I was saying, on my way here, I had a student say something that continues to inspire me and why we engage in these events. She said, I used to think social media was just for fun, but now I know it is a tool for change if we use it right. And that is transforming. And it's at that moment that we realize that as UCC and the team that is supporting us has planted a seed. So well done. So all of us here should know that the online world is powerful, but it needs your voice, it needs your wisdom, and it also needs your caution. Let's not make the internet not just a fun place, but let's make the internet a safe place. So to all the winners today, congratulations. You've definitely earned your spot in the national grand finale. I can tell you one thing, from the UCC, because I also had another team that handles the Uganda Film Festival. If any of you have seen it, we don't do small things. We don't do, our intent is to make sure that you're heard. And I can guarantee you, as Joe asked me to commit, that the national finale is going to be big. So bring your A game. Bring your best. Go and do your research. Nothing happens by accident. You have to practice. You have to research. And you also have to make sure that you have someone in front of you who you can debate to, so that they can give you enough feedback so that you can confirm how well you're doing. Sharpen your minds, people. And especially those who didn't make it today. There's next year and there's the year after. Never give up, because there's always an opportunity to do your best. So to all of you, the next time someone in your school spreads misinformation or downloads something risky, please speak up. When your friend says privacy doesn't matter, educate them. And when you go online, remember that you are your first line of defense. And as Nelson Mandela said, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And here you are today, getting educated. And that's the change that has started today, right now. So as the curtain falls on this central edition, remember this, that the debate might end today, but the mission continues. Be loud, be wise, be safe, because the internet is yours, it's ours, but only if you take full charge of it. Thank you very much, and see you at the finals. Thank you.
I think at the nationals we should have Joe, the chief guest, and Ken do the master's speeches.
Skip you and give it to the next person. Literally, we have done
Don't
it
have
before.
time.
And so, you know, you have teammates outside. Normally, I would say give them a ring, but I know most of it you don't have phone. Affiliators and all people that the country, please tell the students to make their way back home for the award ceremony, so that when we read your name, you can come up and take your award. At the TSA, we do not believe in losing. In fact, we believe in learning. That is, take each and every opportunity as a chance to learn from our peers.
Let's clap for Sumaya Girls. They have been incredible and we were proud to interact with them today. As Sumaya Girls receive their certificates, we will have semi-finalists St. Theresa Girls Bwanda. St. Theresa Girls, make your way to the stage. As St. Theresa Girls, let's clap for St. Theresa Girls. There is
It's Elsie the BB Dot.